Hello. So today I'm back in the park, and I firstly want to thank the people that have already written to me this morning to say what happened, where's the video. And yeah, yesterday I went to an interesting location and recorded a very nice looking video, which unfortunately somehow didn't have the sound on it, so it really wasn't much use. So I've had to come out again this morning to record you this video about the Trecena of Tijax. So what do we expect from it, and what can we, how can we use these days to our highest good? Well, firstly, I just want to say that there is some very interesting occurrences happening during this Trecena, both astronomically and within other parts of the calendar. We see some rather interesting things happening. So I'm going to go into them as we go through the Trecena. I'll stop and kind of like explain each one. And maybe I'll put an extra graphic up as well so that you kind of like can get it a little bit better. Because sometimes, just hearing it might make people wonder, hang on, what's he talking about? So I'll try and do that as well. But anyway, like getting back to the Trecena of Tijax, what do we see about Tijax? Tijax is the Nawal of healing. It is the Nawal which we could associate with the knife. It is the flint or obsidian blade, and it's what we use to make the surgery. It's what we use to cut away the things which are no longer required in our lives. Now, they might be things that we're hanging on to, kind of like they could be attachments. They can also be, of course, Tijax is seen as a very, very good day for surgery. And the way that I see it, the surgery is the beginning of the healing. Now, obviously, with this being a Trecena, which could be seen as releasing, as surgery in itself, then we could see this as being a great time to begin a healing process. So whatever you might have going on in your life, if you're looking to purify, if you're looking to heal from something, if you're looking to release something, then Tijax Trecena is going to be a great time to let go of things, to begin that healing process. So, of course, we're going to begin with one Tijax, the beginning of the healing, literally the number one representing birth and beginnings. And, I would say this is the first cut, right? This is kind of like where we begin that healing process, where we begin that process of discernment. One Tijax could be seen as the potential for the healing. So using the discernment of that razor blade, of that knife, we can see through to where we're going, should we follow that healing process, and where to make our first incision. Now, I often sort of see it like Tijax being the masculine aspect of healing, the surgery, and then Kawok being the feminine aspect, and we're obviously going to move on to Kawok in a moment. But what we really see, or what I really see with the one Tijax, is the first cut of the healing process, the incision that begins it all. Sometimes we might also see it as surgery that begins it all. Okay, where did my healing start? It had to start by removing the dead, the diseased, what was no longer necessary within my body, within my life. And so, one Tijax is a great day to begin that. It's a great day to start that process, to go for the surgery that begins the healing process. From one Tijax, we then move into two Kawok. Now, Kawok again, I see this as the aftercare. This is the feminine, compassionate aspect of healing that comes in. And we see this balance between two sides of it. Kawok can be the rainstorm, and those rainstorms can be scary. Those rainstorms can wash things away. But sometimes they're also washing away the things which are no longer needed in life. They're the things which we have to let go of. And so it makes a space for the new to come in. Now, she can do that very strongly, but she can also do it with compassion. And for me, this is the balance between the determination to bring the new in by sending the storm and the compassionate aspect that soothes and heals. And so we see both sides. And so to Kawok may well bring up the understanding of, during this healing Trecena, where you need to put your compassionate energy to bring in that side of it for the healing, and where to put in your storm energy to thoroughly wash away that which has been cut. From 2 Kawok, we then move to 3 Ajpu. Now, this is the first of what I would call the rather interesting days that happen during this particular Trecena this time around. It won't happen next time around because it's to do with this part of the year. Now, 3 Ajpu we could see as a day on which we go within to find our spiritual path, because Ajpu can represent our path to our hero, our path to our highest self, our path of how to return to the source. And the number 3, representing the inner world. It's a day of meditation. It's a day of going within. It's a day of looking within yourself to find that path to enlightenment, for want of better words, to find that path to your highest aspect. And so a great day for a retreat, a great day to look within. Now, why do I say that this is also a special day? Well, I'm sure that many of you remember a day back in 2012, 21st December 2012, and everybody got very excited about the change of the Baktun. And since that time, of course, it's all gone a bit quiet on that front. What are they, kind of like, what's going on with that then? Didn't the calendar end and all that kind of thing? And it wasn't so much about calendar ending, it was about a cycle turning over. Now, what I mainly deal with on my site and within my work, and what is generally kind of like seen around and about, is the use of the sacred calendar, which is the 20 Nawalas and the 13 numbers. And then maybe only once a year we really mention the solar calendar, which right now the new year is 19th of February and we're in the year Tenkech. More on that later as well. But there is another calendar, and that calendar is called the long count calendar. And it was the long count calendar that turned over on 21st December 2012. Now, that day in 2012 was the day for Ajpu. Sometimes this is seen as a creation day. It's the creation of the world. And it is part of a calendar. The long count counts in cycles of 20, 360, 7,200 and 144,000 days. And so we have to look at it from that point of view. Now, that 360-day count means that every Gregorian year, for sure, but also every Mayan solar year, we're going to move back 5 days. And with 2012 now being, nearly 10 years ago, this means that the Tun is actually changing. The solar year, or the 360-day count within the long count calendar, is now changing this far back from that December date. And we will have completed 10 tuns since that date of 4 Ajpu, 3 Kankin in December 2012. So it's the beginning of a new tun. It's the beginning of a new year. And I think this is rather interesting. Now, it seems to me that the long count calendar was really used very much astronomically. It was used for the calculation of very long dates back into the future, back into the past and forward into the future. And so, does it have some kind of omen meaning? Well, there's the meaning of the Katun, which is half will have water, half will have food, according to what I remember reading. But what we see is that this is a turning of a cycle. So this is something worth celebrating. And of course, it's the halfway mark through the Katun being a bundle of 20 tun. Okay, so we're halfway through that Katun. So it might be an interesting day to reflect using that 3 Ajpu energy of where your journey, your spiritual journey in particular, has taken you over the last 10 tun since the change of the Baktun in 2012. From 3 Ajpu, we then move into 4 Imox. So Imox representing the dream world, Imox representing the connection to the collective consciousness, our psychic ability all around us. And here we see it connected with the number 4. Imox can represent our dreams as well. And so, kind of like when I see 4 Imox, I see very much about manifestation of our dreams into a practical reality. How do we stabilize them? How do we bring them into this world? 4 Imox might give us some very practical pointers. Now, I consider the Aq'ab'al Tijax brings a lot of discernment. And so as we go through this Trecena of Tijax, as we call upon the discernment of Tijax, here we could use that discernment to help us to understand how to manifest our dreams into a stable and physical reality. Now, the 4 is often something I see as kind of like being the no frills version. This is kind of like paring it down to the basics. So what are the basics that you need in your life to bring your dream into reality? 4 Imox might be a very good day to be looking at that. From 4 Imox, we then go into 5 Ik. So Ik, the Nawal of the wind, Ik, the Nawal of communication. Ik is going to help us to speak. It's going to help our words to come out. And here we see it with the number 5. And when we see it with the number 5, this is suggesting that we're going to have to put our effort into it. The 5 representing the hand which does the work. The 5 representing putting our energy into stuff. So sometimes we might see the 5 as blocked. And I think that's just a case of it's when it's not applied properly. And what needs to happen is it needs to be energized with something. We got to put it out there. We've got to put our effort, our energy into it so that it can be fully realized. So, kind of on 5 Ik, this is very much about, putting your energy into your words, putting your energy into what you want to say. It's not going to necessarily drop into your lap. You can't just kind of let's say, rely on it happening automatically. 5 Ik is really a day where you have to initiate the communication. You have to put your energy in. Now, the 5 I often see as something which will bring great benefits as it develops, as that work is manifested. But it's really a time where, kind of like you've got to get the ball rolling. So if there's something needed to be said, that's the day when you push that ball to get it moving. We could also see that Ik is all about change. And here, again, this is kind of like if the 5 is saying you've got to put your energy into it, it's like nothing's going to change until you initiate it. And so perhaps in this Trecena of healing, in this time of discernment, this is a time where you put your energy into your voice or into the changes that you want or need to happen in your life in order to bring that healing. From 5 Ik, we then go into 6 Aq'ab'al. So Aq'ab'al representing the dawn and the twilight. Aq'ab'al representing bringing the new into the world. Aq'ab'al is a time when we're bringing things into the light. Now, a couple of days before, on the 4 Imox, I was talking about bringing our dreams to, understanding how to stabilize our dreams into reality. Aq'ab'al is also something that I see bridging between the dream world and the physical world. And here we see it with the number 6. The number 6 which can represent ultimate stability. The number 6 which can also represent family. Now, one way of seeing it, which sounds a little bit, how can I put it, ominous as it were, is that Aq'ab'al can be bringing things into the light, taking them out of the darkness and into the light. And so it can be about the revelation. And so the number 6 can also be about family. And so maybe this is something which has been hidden within the family that needs to be brought into the light in order to bring healing. It can also be, Aq'ab'al representing the concept, representing the new concept. And here the 6 is understanding how to stabilize it precisely. The 6 being the number of ultimate stability. So once again, if you have a dream or a concept that you're trying to bring into the world, 6 Aq'ab'al would be a wonderful day to stabilize that, because it's kind of like feeding on the energy of the heart of the sky and the heart of the earth, bringing them into the physical realm. So it's like receiving some divine assistance to bring your plan, your concept to light. From 6 Aq'ab'al, we then move to 7 Cat. 7 Cat. Well, I always see that Cat and Tijax have this connection. We've got the cutting and we've got the net. We've got that which binds us and the knife which can help to release us, release our bindings. And so, of course, they go together. And so it's hardly a surprise. I mean, obviously, if we look at the calendar, it's not going to be a surprise. But even from the meanings of things, it's hardly a surprise to see 7 Cat sitting right in the middle of the Tijax Trecena, cutting us free, healing us. And what is it cutting us free from? Well, Cat being our burden and the 7 representing the ending. So it's kind of like the end of the burden. It's the release of the burden happening in the middle of the Tijax Trecena, of course. But what else can we do? Well, it's up to us sometimes to release those burdens, because sometimes we're choosing to carry them in our bag. We're choosing to remain bound to them or bound by them. And so, this occurring in the Tijax Trecena is very much saying, right, okay, if you want to heal, you got to choose what you want to continue to carry with you and what you want to let go of. Because the 7 can be very much about choice. It's about standing on top of the pyramid, looking out and saying, right, okay, what are my best choices? It might be saying kind of like, what do I really need to let go of? And what do I really need to keep in my net? Because, of course, it's not about getting rid of it all. There are some things which are going to be useful to you. But there are some things which are holding you back, dragging you down. There's some things that might even be causing you illness by still having to carry those burdens. So 7 Cat gives you a wonderful day to make your choices about what you're going to let go of. Now, the 7 is also something where we talk about needing to make that decision, because the 7 can be indecisive. So it's almost as if 7 Cat is a day when you are very clearly presented with the understanding of like what would be in your best interest to keep and what would be in your best interest to let go. And all you got to do is release it from your net. Now, that might be easier said than done. I mean, obviously, I often talk about, like, Cat has been great decluttering days. But if you, kind of like, if you're looking at it from that perspective, then, 7 Cat for me is a great day when things are revealed. To say, right, okay, time to let go of this so that you can heal. Time to include that to help you through your healing process. After 7 Cat comes 8 Can. 8 representing wholeness and Can representing wisdom. Now, the 8th day is often the ceremonial day, and it's a day on which we celebrate. And so what we could celebrate here is our teachers that share their wisdom with us, that help to empower us, help us to see through illusions. But I feel that one of the sometimes, the power of our teachers, as it were, and of course using that word power on the Can Day is quite appropriate, but part of their wisdom and part of their power has come through investigating all sides of the wisdom. And sometimes, it's like the greatest teachers in our lives are the ones, I always look at it from the way of looking at it, the greatest horse people are the ones who've fallen off the most. They didn't always come from being, let's say, on the straight and narrow. Sometimes they've fallen off, but that's allowed them to explore the wholeness of Can, because Can represents kind of like the darkness and the light. And so this is a very balanced energy, 8 Can. It helps us to understand how to see through the illusions that may be, let's say, held over us using the wisdom. But sometimes we have to fall foul of those illusions before we can come out the other side and say, hang on, that wasn't real at all. And so it's not just by kind of like staying on one side of it that we're able to encapsulate that wisdom. We have to experience the whole thing. And so it may bring some harsh wisdom out, but it's kind of like the dispelling of illusion is something which we can do once we've got the whole understanding of the wisdom. From 8 Can we then move into 9 Kame, and 9 Kame is a very, very interesting day indeed. Of course, here we're sitting, kind of like into this Trecena of healing. But what can we see? Sometimes if we're going to surgery, then firstly, surgery is painful. Secondly, surgery is scary. We, kind of like, there are several things which maybe now we see them with less fear. But it wasn't that long ago that, going in to have a surgery was a very risky procedure. And of course, this makes us face our fears. But if we don't have the surgery, we're not going to heal. So, how are we going to balance that out? Well, with 9 Kame, this is about understanding how we can transform our lives by facing our fears. The Lords Kame, the Lords of Death, the Lords of the Underworld, of Aq'ab'al, the place of fear. This is where we go to face the things that frighten us most. But this is also where we go to transform into a higher aspect of ourselves. And we see that day, Kame, representing death, combined with the number 9, which can represent the feminine, but can also represent life, the number of lunations that we spend in the womb. And so we can see that, kind of like this could be transformation through the feminine. This could certainly be transformation through the women of our world. But we can also see it as facing our fears to transform our life. This is a day of life scale transformation. And so it might be a day of facing some very big fears. Now, we're armed with our obsidian blade through the Tijax Trecena. We're armed with our discernment. And maybe this is just enough to give us the understanding of where to land the blow from the flint blade, where to cut through our fears, to take us through life. Because, sometimes I wouldn't want to be, well, I'm going to be as cliched as to say, sometimes are we really living our life when we're so much in fear of something? And like we could see how much more life we could bring in by overcoming that fear, by cutting through it. We could literally see kind of like 9 Kame as facing the fear and coming into a new life. We could see it almost as kind of like a death and resurrection day. And so this is certainly a very, very fortunate day within this Tijax Trecena. So if there's something big that you need to face in your life, in your world, 9 Kame is certainly a very good day to do it. So now we enter into a rather interesting sequence. And that interesting sequence happens both within the calendar and astronomically. The first day that we're going to enter into is the day 10 Kech. And 10 Kech a wonderful day for being out in nature, particularly with your friends, your family, your community. Kech seen as the Nawal of the spiritual leader, the strength that comes to us that helps us to lead through the wilderness, going out and connecting with the trees and the plants, wilderness in general. And so, Ten Kerch would be a fantastic day to go out on a group adventure into the wilderness. If you have the opportunity to go on or organise a group hike for your community, then Ten Kerch would be a wonderful day to do it. And of course, in this Tijax Trecena, we would expect it to bring healing. And so maybe the beginning of the healing comes through this walk in the wilderness with your community, with your people. But there's something else that I want to highlight about Ten Kerch. If you've been following, every Kerch day, you'll realize is a change of the month in the Mayan solar calendar, the calendar of 365 days. Now, that calendar changes every 365 days, which right now is 19th of February. And you may remember that the 19th of February was the day Ten Kerch. Now, if you look back through my Kerch posts, you'll see this structure that I've drawn on each one with the names and dates. And what you see is 13 20-day periods, 260 days, that takes us through what we could call the summer months, from February through to November. And then 5 months, 100 days, that take us through the darker part of the year. They're then followed by 5 days called Tz'i or Wayeb before we start the new year again. Again, that will be 19th of February next year. So the interesting thing is that we began this year, the bearer of this year is called Ten Kerch. That was the day on 19th of February, and now we come round to Ten Kerch again. So we've completed this first cycle of 260 days, which I like to see as a cycle of life, because it's getting lighter. We're going through growing the cotton, growing the harvest. Midsummer is when it peaks. It then comes down, and as it comes down to this time, which is, kind of like this time when we've finished the harvest, when we're going into the darker side of the world of the year, at least in the northern hemisphere, we're finishing it off, and it's like on this second occurrence of the year Lord, the year bearer, we are now going into the 5 months of the underworld, as it were. And so, again, a very interesting day to take stock, as you did on the 3 Ajpu day. This Ten Kerch day might be saying to you, right, how have you helped to connect your community with the wilderness since the new year came round, since the year Ten Kerch began 260 days ago? Has your reconnection with the wilderness, has your reconnection with the trees, with the mountains, with the animals, helped you to bring strength into your community? Has it helped to strengthen your community in general? These might be things that you might consider. And also, as we go into these last 105 days of the Mayan solar year, kind of like this is, the more introverted part, I see it as. And so, Ten Kerch can be, kind of like it can bring some stubbornness within our community, stubborn within our society. But here, it's starting to become reflective as it goes into that darkness. The strength of it has changed. Now, I remember 2018, the year 6 Kerch, was a very, very powerful year for a lot of people. And certainly during June of 2018, that year was reaching its peak. We also had a Venus event around there as well. And so it was kind of like really very, very strong for people. And what was reported to me by many was that once we hit this point where the Year Lord returns in early November, that's when it started to come down. So possibly some of the strong decisions, some of what we might see as arrogance or stubbornness within our society may well change as we go into this part of the year, may well soften the year. Now, the next Nawal that we're going to move into is 11 Anil. So 11 Anil representing the ripening, the yellowing, and here we see that the Nawal Anil combined with the number 11. The number 11 moving in many different directions. And so here we could see that our inspiration for our ripening, for bringing things to their ultimate fruition, comes from many sources. We could also see this as receiving the fruits of our labor from many different directions. So we can see both of those things in there. So it's a great day to kind of like be going around, and you might be looking, whether we call it whether we see this as in reality or metaphorically, it's like looking around your garden for different signs of the harvest. Now, okay, we might be getting rather late in some aspects in the northern hemisphere in particular, but we could certainly see this metaphorically as well. Kind of like looking around your world to see where are the fruits of your labor, where are they coming from, and how can you gather them. And it might, take you on some rather weird and wonderful journey, because like the number 11 can often do that. We're not quite sure where it's going to take us next. But, it's a day to kind of like follow our intuition as to where to go. But I also said that this is some interesting times astronomically. And this day of 11 Anil falls on a day which is seen as both astronomical and astrological Samhain. Now, this is very interesting to me because, when we look at things like astronomy, we'll find that the ancients were building temples, the ancients were building sites that line up with certain dates. Now, those dates are set because of where the sun rises on the horizon or where it sets on the horizon. So, you'll get like the sun entering a temple on a particular day or viewed from a particular point. It rises above the mountain, you got the temple there, you got the mountain there, it will align on certain dates and that kind of thing. And one of those dates, one of the cross-quarter days, is called Samhain. Now, this has now been attached to the Gregorian calendar, the festival of All Souls or All Saints or whatever you might call it, and like 31st of October or 1st of November being those days which are celebrated. But I would like to put it out there that kind of like if we follow it astronomically, where the real power of that day is, in my view, is actually when the sun is in the position that it was supposed to be in, and that falls on that 11th Anil day on the 7th of November. So again, kind of like if you want to make your manifestations for Samhain and celebrate, this thinning of the veil, then perhaps that 11th Anil day, 7th of November, may be more fruitful and beneficial for you. Straight after this day, on the day 12 Toch, we also have another very interesting astronomical event, a lunar eclipse. And so you see how these three days are stacking up as being rather busy. And so I'm going to start with 12 Toch. What does this represent? Well, it's the Thanksgiving Day. Toch representing making our ceremony, making our offering. Toch, to give back for what we have received. And what are we talking about? We're talking about the number 12. The number 12 representing all of our life's experience. So this is a big payment day. This is a day to give back for, kind of like all of our experiences. Everything that we work with in our lives, everything that we've received throughout our life path, our life journey. This is what we're giving back on 12 Toch. Now, I would like to mention again these two organizations or two projects which I think are very much worth giving to. So if you feel like making a donation, if you feel like making your service in that way, then I would very, very strongly heartily recommend both the Popol Chai project in Peten, where the elders are getting together to create a teaching center, a repository of knowledge, somewhere between a library and a university, for want of better words, where the wisdom that they carry, the wisdom of their plants and of the cosmovision, can be stored and passed on to the next generation. This is a wonderful project that I've had some understanding of since around about 2018, and now it seems that there is a proper avenue to get funding to them. So I very strongly recommend it, and I'll put the link obviously in the page. We also, of course, I always want to recommend Odim as well, who are doing some wonderful work in San Pablo and San Juan with regards to medical work and education, education for health. Again, something which is sometimes not, kind of like looked at so deeply in those areas. I think Odim are really making a difference, and they very much have their their heads and hearts in the right places to make that difference. So again, if that's something which appeals to you, I would strongly recommend making an offering to them. And so finally, we're going to end up this Tijax Trecena on the day 13 Tz'i. So Tz'i, our dog, our faithful guide, our loyalty. Tz'i is a great day to receive guidance, and here we see it with the number 13. The number 13 representing the spirit world, representing the ancestors. So a day to receive ancestral guidance is something we could very, very strongly see it as being. So, could be a good day to get a reading of some kind, but also you might also find that you don't need it, because kind of like the ancestors are speaking very loudly with you and helping you to understand which direction to go in. Now, we could also see that the Tz'i can represent the vices, and it's kind of interesting because a couple of weeks ago we had this celebration of the day of Saint Simon Peter, which many people associate with this syncretized deity called Mashimon. Interestingly enough, a few years ago, a guy called Julio Menchu wrote a very interesting piece on his site Espiritualidad Maya. And what he was saying was that the original, kind of like the origin of Mashimon comes from the Rilach-Mam. And the Rilach-Mam's celebration days are 13 Tz'i and 13 Ajpu, which I found very, very interesting. So it's a celebration of the Earth Lord. Now, from the Earth Lord, we receive everything, but also this is where all the vices are. And I would say that, kind of like in some ways we could be seeing this as a day to ask our ancestors or ask for spirit to help to release us from our vices and guide us to keep us on the straight and narrow so that we can stay healed once we've been through the healing process. But of course, sometimes going through that healing process is also going to ask us questions. Those questions might be, are we able to stay away from our vices? And here we might find our ancestors or the spirit world coming along to dangle that which we, let's say, enjoy when we know that we shouldn't, right in front of our faces and saying, have you healed yet? Have you got over it yet? Have you managed to cut yourself free of this, or are you still attached to it? And so 13 Tz'i can be a very, very powerful day, as I say, for receiving guidance. And, that guidance can really help keep us on the straight and narrow. But I would say that it may be a day when it's almost as if Spirit is testing our faith. Maybe it's testing our resolve and our ability to overcome our vices too. So, I hope you found this rather extended version of Trecena video interesting. Like I said, it's some very interesting days that crop up in that. And I look forward to seeing you next time for the Trecena of Bats. Thank you.